Hi, I'm Tom Shaller. Thanks so much for sending in your questions. They're great questions, and I'm just going to take them in the order that we got them. The first is from Madi Baidan. She asks about who's eligible to run for elections and what the budgets for campaigns are. Anybody technically who's over 35 years old and has been is a natural-born citizen and has been in the country for the past 14 years is eligible to run for president. That's obviously literally hundreds of millions of Americans. More technically, who's actually going to run are usually people who've run for major office, or in the case of somebody like Donald Trump, who have a national profile. I mean, my parents are over 35, and they were born in the United States, and they've lived in the country for 14 years, but they're certainly not really considered candidates for president. The budgets are pretty high. We've had our first billion-dollar presidential election. Barack Obama in 2008 was the first candidate to raise and spend more than $1 billion, so it gets pretty expensive by that standpoint. But on the other hand, if 100 million Americans vote and you spend $1 billion, that's only about $10 per person, so it's a lot of money overall, but if you think about it per voter, maybe it's not so much. Salman Ahmed asks about specific candidate support and can you be public about it? Yes, of course. In fact, you're encouraged to express your opinions for candidates. If you're watching American television or international television, you see people showing up wearing hats and stickers and shirts and carrying banners, either supporting or in some cases opposing candidates. Freedom of speech includes the freedom to say even the nastiest things about politicians and celebrities in America. The libel laws protect individual private citizens from personal attacks, but politicians and celebrities generally under the First Amendment are exempt from those attacks, and so you can call the president the nastiest name you can think of and you will never be persecuted because the First Amendment protects your freedom of expression. From political harm, you may lose your job or be ostracized and banished by your friends. The Constitution doesn't protect you from that, but you can say whatever you want about candidates. Kareem Sami is next. The question is it enough to get a specific number of votes from the delegates to be able to run in elections? What was the reason for Trump's recent success in becoming the nominee? The nomination is different from the election. The election happens in the fall between the two-party nominees for president. The nomination process is run by the individual parties, which are private organizations, and they don't necessarily have to have the same rules, and they have very different rules for how they select their nominees. But generally, like the general election between the two parties, it's a series of statewide contests in the states to win the support of party loyalists, either Republican loyalists in the Republican nomination or Democratic loyalists in the Democratic nomination, and you rack up the support of delegates. They're actual people. They go to the national convention, and the candidate who can, if it happens, gets the majority of all the delegates from the states, becomes the nominee, and it looks like Donald Trump will have the majority, and pretty shortly I think Hillary Clinton will have a majority of Democratic delegates. That's why they're the nominees. In the general election, those are popular voters in all, it doesn't matter which party, everybody gets to vote who is registered and who turns out to vote. And then it's essentially an electoral college fight, again, aggregated at the state level. Those who win, the candidate who wins the most electoral votes state by state ends up being the president. Are there other parties besides the Democrats and Republicans? Yes, dozens of parties. They just normally don't have sufficient support to gain a lot of voters, and because of that and because of the way the state election rules are written, they usually require that for you to be on the ballot you have to perform a certain level, get a certain share of the vote in the previous election, or you have to write in to get on the ballot. And so the big problem for parties other than the two major parties is that their candidates often aren't on the ballot because they haven't been certified as parties with a minimum amount of support. This year, the Libertarian Party will have a candidate, Gary Johnson, on 47 state ballots. He may drain votes from the Republican nominee, Donald Trump. We'll see. In the past, the Green Party and Ralph Nader was able to get, I think Ralph Nader was on the ballot in 48 states. Back in 2008, he obviously took enough votes from Al Gore to prevent Al Gore from winning Florida, and because Gore lost Florida, he lost the election in the Electoral College, even though Gore beat George W. Bush in the popular vote. So sometimes third-party candidates, though not likely to win the election, they can spoil the election for either the Democrat or the Republican nominee, the two major parties. Can an Iraqi American vote? Asked Mustafa Zayed. Of course. Anybody who's an American citizen, regardless of their ethnicity or country of origin, if they've emigrated to the country and have become a naturalized citizen, they can vote. They may not be able to run for president, but they can vote for president. This issue has come up in the past with Obama, people wondering whether he was eligible to be president, but nobody was doubting whether Obama was eligible to vote for president. Ted Cruz was born in Canada. There was some discussion about whether Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas, was eligible to be elected president, but nobody doubts he's eligible to vote for president. So as long as you're over 18, I should clarify, and you register in your state, and you're an American citizen who's either passed an American citizenship test and gone through the process of naturalization, or if you were born in the United States, as I was, you get to vote every election as long as you maintain your registration. If you move, you have to re-register in your new state, but if you register, you can vote.